Board input. And we have item 8. Troy. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you.
You're going to talk to us about a change to local board delegation.
Thank you very much. Tory up there. Get it all the time.
Another Freudian slip.
Look, I'm just going to go through in a concise way some of the things that have gone around in a memo to you all. I'm just going to open. Just remember, I'm presenting in a climate where the media this week has picked up on the ability for St Luke's to be doubled in size on a non-notified basis, which I find an interesting time to make this sort of submission to you guys. So I'm going to read selectively from bullets and extrapolate in my 5 minutes. The first bullet point refers to the existing resolution, which I'm saying must be amended to allow local boards to have oral or written submissions through to a duty commissioner on notification decisions and or hearing commissioners on substantive applications in situations, remember, only in situations where the views of the local board are very divergent from the processing planner. Now, I'm just going to say this is not on the memo, but currently the resolution seems to imply that to do that you would need to amend the Local Government Act, Auckland Council Act it is, and I must say I take a very different view of that, and hopefully one of the things that will come from this today is that there'll be some legal review. As I understand it, Section 104 of the Resource Management Act retains the discretion in any commissioner to regard anything they damn well want to in most cases. And secondly, remember that currently the resolution enables a board's verbatim comment to be included in the planner report that goes through to the commission. So I put it to you that once the planner report goes through to the commission, it becomes evidence. And to me, I'm afraid there is no difference whether the commissioner receives its evidence in the form of verbatim evidence in the form of a planner's report or from the source of that verbatim itself. Legally, I think the current standing or advice that you've relied on to make the resolution that you have is a little bit shortchanging the process. So I move on to second bullet point. The changed process I'm suggesting will complement transparency and completeness of information for effective decision making by commissioners. Drop down to the third, fourth, fifth bullet point. Several instances of the process planner's rejection of local board recommendations for full or limited notification have indicated errors on behalf of the processing planners, in my view, and I have specific ward examples, of which I've mentioned 3 there, but some of them occasionally are sort of bigger, you know, not so much the private property, but the bigger community interest. And a classic example is the Hannah Block, a large brick building in King's Prep, which has been acknowledged by planners as being a wrong decision because information that it could have relied on to bring a different result was not available to it through the non-notified process that the processing planners recommended against the views of myself. So I'll just put that another way. My views on that specific example were very strongly that this was a matter that required notification. The processing planners, hugely reliant on consultants, took a different view. The matter got referred somewhere else, a duty commissioner, without the ability to test that point. And as a result, the planners now acknowledge that there has been an error because sufficient information that it could have ended up in a different result couldn't be received because it was non-notified. And that to me is an absolute suboptimal way of processing resource management matters and reflects badly also on Council's planner department itself. So second to last paragraph, which doesn't have a bullet, this is my general ideological stance now, and this is of course board unanimous resolution backed. The sort of process planning activity is resulting cumulatively in either non-complying or mostly non-notified proposals to dramatically alter character areas and streets. Change is not the concern here. Right? the loss of a lovely weatherboard villa in Remuera, yeah, we don't like it, but that's not the issue. The issue is that there is systemic planning process culture and a default reliance on applicant-funded expertise allowing that change. So the processing planners are hugely reliant and influenced by expertise which the applicant pays for. The role of local board input, therefore, being allowed in either duty commissioner decisions or full substantive hearings has never been more important. So my final point is an additional recommendation. The system of enabling pre-lodgement meetings that currently exists between developer applicants and processing planners fosters a deep community distrust of the process, and the St Luke's case, I guess, is an example of that. Academically, though, remember, the meeting between a council planner and a developer's planner to iron out what the effects are or might be, or where they might be minor, or what sorts of evidence might be required, is really a de facto type of hearing in itself. It really is. Therefore, as a very minimum requirement, any pre-lodgement meetings and the minutes thereof, and they are minuted, I understand, must also, as a matter of process, be declared and submitted to the board member when they are getting the application to consider their comment about notification on. Remember, the board members in different wards only get the opportunity to make a comment in certain trigger cases. So what I'm suggesting shouldn't scare you in any way. This is not going to open up a can of worms for every single resource management application needing a local board input. There are quite clear triggers when our input comes into being. But what is incorrect in my view is the current resolution which prevents local boards from being able to make comments to commissioners directly. And a process improvement can be made by requiring pre-lodgement meetings and minutes to be disclosed as part of the information which gets through to board members and subsequently, no doubt, to hearing commissioners. Thank you.
Right, Troy. Firstly, thank you for your very thoughtful submission to us today. Obviously a submission that you put a lot of work into and has at its essence significant constitutional and legal issues for us to reflect on. And I normally this would be a time for question, but I want to exercise a little bit of discretion here because I'm going to ask Phil to give us a little bit of guidance around where it would be appropriate for us to take this discussion, because you've given us a lot to chew on today. Mm-hmm. And I would have thought that the better idea is we need to reflect well on this and do so within an environment of it being helpful to how we continue to shape the relationships. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So I'm certainly not threatened by it. I think that it's a very, very thoughtful contribution. I understand the reasons why we shaped the delegations in the first instance. It was to reflect the nature of the family approach, you know, that we're a part of a team. Yeah. But your contribution here sort of just asks us to reflect on that, and it actually might be part of a reshaping of the way to go forward for boards and for the governing body. So I really appreciate, Troy, your energy and your analysis here. Now, Phil, best direction for this to enable us to grapple with it reasonably smartly and get some reasonable advice in. Troy's had one or two interesting comments about the level of advice we get thus far. So
I'm happy to move.
Your worship, my comments only about process, not about the substance. Yeah, no, I got that. I think the appropriate thing is to request a report that comes through. Look, reasonably it will be in the new year. We can work on that. It will need to traverse the legal and practical aspects of this, the notification element and the question of input consents themselves. So a little bit of work to do, but we could bring something forward. It logically needs to come back here at some point because it may affect the decision allocation, and that's a question for the governing body. Yeah. Your call whether it goes
the Auckland Development Committee first?
Probably needs to go somewhere first to sort of give it the opportunity of really sort of, sort of getting, well, okay, we'll find a committee for it to go to. We won't say where it's going to, but it will go
It's fine,
somewhere,
Mr.
Troy.
Mayor. Isn't it
Maybe
policy?
the
That's where all the
hearings
good
committee.
stuff
maybe the-
You
goes.
just
Yep,
give me
yep,
the
yep.
difficult stuff and
Yeah,
I'll
well, hang on,
just
hang on.
take it on.
Another
Actually-
all-day meeting.
Yes, that's right, it will be. And look,
Don't run the RMI,
the
we can
logical
do it.
place,
I will be there.
order, the logical place might be the hearings committee. And I would have thought Linda would be the ideal person to pilot it through in the first instance to enable us then to reflect on it at governing body with recommendations from them. But look, Phil will sort that out. So the important thing, Troy, is that there is a pathway.
Yep.
As he acknowledges, we've really only got, sort of a short month for this year, so probably a February.
Yep, good.
But we don't want to muck around on it because you raise some very important points, and if we're going to make changes, then it's best for us to grapple
Consider.
with it in this term.
I'm happy to move. at
Yep,
the,
okay, so Linda is,
those
yep, it goes to
recommendations.
the hearings committee.
Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Troy.
Well done, Troy.
I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Troy, will you just sit there? Now, councillor Kathy,
I also
away you
have
go
a
while we get
question
that.
and a comment.
Sewer.
My comment is I agree with you, and my question is, should it not go to a committee of the whole?
It will
It's
go
a very
to,
important.
it will come to the governing body,
It will.
but it needs to go through the hearings committee first to shape it up, okay? And
Probably right.
to reflect on the contents of the report, but it will finally come back here for us all to finalise.
My question is, you mentioned in your presentation that there's not a lot of these contentious issues. I can think of 4 in my ward: Three Kings Quarry, Eden Park, Unitec and St Luke's Mall, all of which
Okay.
there is a divergent view between the board and the governing body.
Okay, so I mentioned it in a bigger community sense in terms of the size of the thing, like the Hannah Block is a significant building on a school property, but I can tell you that in 1 week alone in the Remuera area, I had to comment on about 5 demolition applications for, your classic leafy green, weather-boarded type of property, right? So certainly in my ward, and particularly in Remuera and parts of St Heliers, where there are a little bit of older buildings on larger sites, which obviously are under a little bit of pressure as land values go up, there is real change happening cumulatively with a pretty big disregard for people are selling up and moving on to not be next to a multi-storey development.
Next
Right?
question.
That sort of thing is happening wildfire at grassroots level in my suburb.
Will you be taking this to the committee of the chairs of local boards? The chairs forum?
I anticipated that this would be deferred for a report and everything, so I suspect that by the time I come back before this, there will be a stronger indication of support from other boards. Yeah, that's been talked about by Desley with a few others, I understand, on my behalf, yeah, or our behalf, yeah.
Right, councillor Mike, you have a question.
Yes, Mr Mayor. First of all, thank you very much, Troy, for bringing this before us, because there is a lot of disquiet among local boards and in the wider community about this matter. Could I ask, Mr Mayor, that the report that is to go to the hearings committee for shaping up also be forwarded directly to us, flagged to us,
Yeah.
in case it gets lost in the
Absolutely.
rustling.
Yeah, no,
It'll be in the agenda, won't it,
It'll
Mr Chairman?
all, you will
Be in the
all,
agenda. Yeah, be in the agenda.
thank you very much.
I
for all
want
of the
to see it
assistance.
flagged, thank you.
Just hi-ho, I know it's nearly Christmas.
It's more work for
I always appreciate the advice. All councillor Mike's asking for is that a red flag comes up for the attention of councillors, so that they know if they want to turn up at the hearings committee for that initial discussion, then they should. Troy, well done. Merry Christmas.
All the same.
Now, I'll move those recommendations. All those